In this world, there are many different personalities. Each unique personality serves a purpose and usually aids other personalities for the betterment of society. In this presentation, we will be looking at these different types of people, the role that they play, and how it affects the integration of technology and new ideas into a society. Rogers' diffusion of innovation is a system that explains how new ideas are adopted into a social system. Within this system, he categorizes groups as innovators, early adopters, early majority, late majority, and laggards. Innovators are a small group that are willing to experience new ideas. They are often the idea creators and are open-minded to change in society. I personally see them as the eccentrics. Not very popular for all of their ideas, but creative and innovative individuals. Early adopters hold the highest degree of leadership and respect in the system. They are responsible for integrating change into a society. Because of their leadership and respect, they really help the rest of society accept a new idea. These are the entrepreneurs, philanthropists, businessmen of society, very intelligent in their approach to change. Early majority and late majority make up the majority of the population with about 66% of the population. These are your everyday people. Early majority adopts new ideas before the majority. They are not so willing to accept a new idea with either thinking about a concept or witnessing success from early adopters. Late majority are less willing to adopt new ideas for progress, but rather adopt new ideas out of a necessity or peer pressure. These are often skeptical and cautious with the idea of change in society. Finally, laggards resist change in society in general. Characteristically, they are typically isolated individuals. While a small percentage of a social group, laggards look to the past instead of the future, showing their resistance to change. Utilizing adapters. Innovators, early adopters, and early majority actively work to foster change in a social system. Innovators are the frontmen of the process, generating ideas for change. Christ used innovators in his own ministry. Peter, for example, was very vocal and innovative in his service for Christ. However, he could not implement his ideas on his own. Similarly, innovators need the help of the early adopters to implement change in a society. Early adopters are the individuals that really introduce change to society. They are the leaders that hold the majority's respect. They work with the ideas of the innovators, see the potential, and begin the implementation process. These are people like James and John. Both were highly respected in the community and often were the leaders that the disciples and fellow Christians looked to for guidance, other than Christ. Finally, the early majority play a major role in the process as they are the ones who really carry out the change in society. They look to their leaders or adopters for guidance and spread change through society. This would equate to the majority of the disciples who look to Christ first, but also the natural leaders within their group to exact change in their societies. Each group relies on the other to exact change in society. If one does not rely on the other, change will not happen. In discussing the diffusion of innovation within businesses and firms, Crespin Mazet et al. Recognized one of the core challenges that project-based development firms need to address in the diffusion of innovation, i.e. the connectivity between their organizational levels. As groups are reliant on the other to prove successful, each has to communicate and trust in order for change to occur. Additionally, this affects the next set of adapters, the late majority and the laggards in society. While it is the innovators, early adopters, and early majority that begin and adopt change, it is the late majority and laggards that complete the process of change in society. Both these groups, however, are typically skeptical of change and often resist the process of change. From a technology standpoint, this would mean concern for privacy. Privacy concerns increase at later stages of adoption for more technology-reluctant late majority users. This makes sense from a cautious standpoint. It is hard to trust new innovations. That is why it is the example of the other three groups that persuades late majority and laggards. Christ also dealt with such groups. Thomas, for example, would be an example of late majority in my opinion. He was late to trust Christ as risen Savior and needed proof to accept it. Laggards to me would be the religious leaders that looks to tradition of the past instead of to Christ for answers. Did Christ exclude these groups of people? No, he taught them as he taught everybody else, but ultimately it was their choice to either accept or deny. Biblical worldview. As we have seen throughout this presentation, there are many different personalities in a system that work together to exact change in a society. Christ in his perfection created each individual to perform certain tasks and each hold value in society. The innovators, early adopters, and early majority start the process of change, create ways to adopt it, and implement it into society. The late majority and laggards, on the other hand, ground society and in a way protect society by exercising caution. Each group can have its downfalls, yet ultimately each builds off the other in order to create change in a society. In any change, technological or not, it is important to remember the principles found in Philippians 4:8 when working towards changing a society. Whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue, and if there be any praise, think on these things. These are my resources.